Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Earthly Headlines. Today we're going to talk a little bit more about Christianity, and we're going to visit Constantinople or Istanbul, or the seat of the Byzantine Empire. And we're going to visit the largest cathedral in the ancient world at the time, which was built about 550 AD or something like that. The headline reads, "Long lost baptistery for emperors possibly discovered at the largest cathedral in the ancient world." So basically where the emperors went to get baptized was at actually the largest Christian cathedral ever constructed, until I think there was one built in like the 1500s, like 1,000 years later. But yeah, this was probably one of the first ones, period. The largest one built. And the archaeologists, they discovered what might be so there was this purported place called the Great Baptistery where royalty and specifically emperors went to get, like I mentioned earlier, baptized and christened and basically sworn in as a Christian emperor. And after a few people came and went through the area, it seemed like that part of that site where that baptism site seemed to disappear or was moved, and it had become legend for a while. And there also the emperor's children would get baptized there, and whatever other immediate family members would as well. And it's at this place called Hagia Sophia, which means Temple of Holy Wisdom or Holy Wisdom, Place of Holy Wisdom. And this place, let me show you a picture. This is what it looks like, and it's a massive, massive place. Was built originally by Emperor Justinian of the Byzantine Empire, and this is the city, and it's located around here on the eastern part, near I guess you would call it a peninsula here. It's toward the end. It's a very, very ancient and very, very massive building made of brick and mortar, essentially. In addition to the baptistery, other archaeologists made several discoveries at this place, which we'll get into in a second. And most of these discoveries were made by people who were refurbishing or renovating some of the areas. And they would discover things like completely new buildings or new rooms, chambers, and all that stuff, and even some artifacts. And it's really interesting that they would find them after all these years. And I'm wondering if they were deliberately hidden or just forgotten about when power would change hands. Whatever the case is, the researchers discovered all of these things. They reconstructed what the cathedral's patriarchal palace looked like, and even identified a spot where the Byzantine emperor himself once stood during a ceremony. And we'll get into that in a second. And this is all published on, and I think it was just a book. Yeah, it was published in a book called Hagia Sophia in Context, an archaeological re-examination of the Cathedral of Byzantine Constantinople. So yeah, this article, by the way, is on Live Science. I'll have a link in the description. So I've already gone over the history. 532 is when it was built. A series of riots resulted in a church called Hagia Sophia being burned down. So Justinian ordered the reconstruction of this massive cathedral with the same name, and it was completed in 537, and it's 180 feet high above the ground. And then the Ottoman Empire came in, they captured Constantinople, turned it into a mosque, and they left everything largely intact. They were pretty remarkably respectful of the area. I don't know why, but it seemed like they were impressed with just the stature of the thing. And so let's go over some of these discoveries. So there were new structures that were discovered in the northwest and south of I guess you can call it the campus. And some of those structures had evidence of white marble courtyard that once surrounded the cathedral. So that obviously must have been really, really beautiful. And I'm guessing it would be, the courtyard would probably be right beyond these walls here. Researchers also identified an ancient library located underneath the structure known as the Large Hall. So there's a subterranean library which has long been rumored. Actually, I think it's long been talked about in the Vatican having the same thing, which could have held thousands of scrolls, untold amounts of wisdom, and not just scripture, but I mean artifacts across the board could have been stored in that library as well. And everyone knows the best libraries are underground and kept secret for hundreds of years, and they hold all kinds of esoteric knowledge that us mere mortals have no access to. So that is a big deal, that secret ancient library. And again, this discovery was made after museum officials restored parts of the cathedral. And I'm wondering how much stuff they took and didn't mention. And this article doesn't make mention of what specifically in the library, but I'm assuming that there must have been some interesting stuff. Even things like maps would be interesting, journals, or even old versions of scripture, old translations of stuff. So who knows? There might be even pottery and jewelry and all that type of stuff. During the restorations, authorities removed some of the more recently placed plaster, revealing the medieval and ancient remains that lie underneath, including mosaics, frescoes, sculptures, tiles, and graffiti. So yeah, all of these things are culturally significant stuff that, if analyzed, I'm sure would divulge a lot more details and a lot more information that we currently have, if not already. Which I don't think they've done that yet, because it seems like a fairly recent discovery. Researchers found that a structure known as the Northwest Vestibule was part of the 6th century cathedral built by Justinian I and was not constructed by the Ottoman Empire as was previously believed. So Justinian gets more credit for some of the design and the construction of the original building, not the Ottoman Empire. So again, that's another example of something being amended. Recognizing that the Northwest Vestibule was part of the Justinianic Church means that all previous plans of Hagia Sophia are incomplete and their use should cease for scholarly purposes. And alter significantly the known plan of that world-famous building. The emperor stands here. So this is within the Northeast Vestibule now. In the Northeast, they found this disc-shaped spot made out of igneous rock called porphyry. And the emperor would have stood there, and they know the emperor would have stood there because it marks a position where he would stand in the ceremony, essentially. Like that would be his spot. It's a part of the original 6th century floor, and they intended it for him to stand there, because who else would stand there? It wouldn't make sense. So there's like some bricks or something over it, and yeah, this was part of the original flooring here, and they think that's where he would have stood. Obviously that's not exactly what it looked like in its heyday. It probably was there probably was something on there, or some sort of stoop or something like that, but yeah, that he probably would have stood here. It's like a prominent position if you look at it in relation to other parts of the room. As such, it probably is the only place where it's possible to identify anywhere the precise spot on which the most famous Byzantine emperor stood. They also found remains of white marble slabs, suggesting that the exterior may have been covered in more of the slabs than previously believed. It would have given the building a strikingly different appearance when constructed compared to the red brick of recent centuries. So that makes sense. The same thing I heard was said of the pyramids as well. The pyramids might have been covered in either marble or this type of limestone, that when the sun shone on it, it would make it extra glowy and extra radiant, and it would stick out from if you were looking at it from far away, and it would accentuate that holy or that spiritual, that I guess that image that you would see it of literally God's house. Like it would be shining, kind of like in the movies. Except they figured it out and they made it happen in real life. Covering the area around the church and exterior walls with white marble slabs will have reflected light both onto the building from its surroundings and off its walls, enhancing visibility from a distance in the bright sunlight, creating an almost luminous quality. So yeah, this was 1500 years ago that they had this going. So the pyramids are significantly older, but the fact that something like the pyramids also had that type of architecture that I guess you would call it technique or something of making it more luminous. That's very interesting, but also not very surprising as well, since it's about, holiness, and it's a very sacred ground. And that's a good way of demarcating it and wowing the masses, for sure. Plenty of additional discoveries likely await because they haven't finished combing through everything. At this point, they can't even tell exactly how many resources and hours of work went into construction of the cathedral. It must have taken so many people and so much time and so many resources to build it. I mean, that's massive. That is massive. It doesn't look like much, but it's in person, it's huge. It's like he said, it's 55 meters above the ground. That's insane. While many parts of the complex remain undiscovered, preventing accurate quantification of the time and resources involved. So again, there's probably a bunch of stuff underground too. You have to keep that in mind as well. This is a holy part of the city, and they felt that way for well over 1,000 years. So you can't just assume that you found everything, because there's probably so many nooks and crannies that they haven't looked through, and there might be even more. There might be like a who knows? There might be a crazy dungeon of some sort underneath, or something akin to that library, or maybe even a passageway that leads outside the city or something like that, because they found certain things in Western Asia, and parts of the Middle East as well. So that's not surprising in the least bit, especially around Israel and stuff. I mean, those caves and caverns and all of those, some of them are networks and some of them are connected to each other. So that's something to keep in mind. And they have that in Jerusalem as well, which is the holiest of holies, essentially, right? While many parts of the complex remain undiscovered, I already read that part. The scale of the construction project is such that few, if any, comparisons in the world of late antiquity are possible. Yeah, that it's just that type of project. There's also Gothic cathedrals as well, which came a little bit later, and I'd be interested to see if they had similar architecture, or if they were inspired by the similar principles. I haven't looked that far deep into it yet, but yeah, the art of cathedral building does go back. I mean, it's a tradition that does go back and spans a long time. So let me know what you guys think about all this, about the long lost baptistery. I mean, they're not clear, but they think that if it's going to be anywhere, it might be in there. If you guys know any rumors or anything about the cathedral itself, or if you have any comments about Constantinople or the history, let me know in the comments. And I'll have a Neanderthal episode sometime in the coming this week, and we'll talk about the Neanderthal Wars and the two schools of thought regarding that. And I'll talk to you guys later.